p.m., so we'll call the meeting to order. All right, Friday, February the 11th at 6:30 is our Friday Free Flick at the Community Center. Story time and pre-K play are Mondays at 9 a.m. at the Community Center. PEP, Police Educating the Public. Next meeting will be February the 15th at 10 a.m. here in the town boardroom. Golf Cart Advisory Committee meeting will be held February 15th at 5:30 here in the town boardroom. Blood Drive will be held February 18th between 1 and 5:30 p.m. at the Community Center. And our next Coffee with a Cop will be February the 24th at 9 a.m. here in the town boardroom. Next Planning Board meeting is scheduled for February the 28th at 6 p.m. in the town boardroom. And our next Neighborhood Watch Board meeting will be held March 1st at the town boardroom. Item number 7, I'd like to invite Alicia. I believe I saw her in the back. Is she still here? There we go. She has a new employee introduction. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Mayor Holland. The staff is very excited and pleased to welcome Drew Conekin to the Parks and Recreation team. And Drew will begin her duties on a part-time basis later this month and on a full-time basis beginning March 1st.
Next up, I'd like to invite Bill Walker, Fire Chief, to discuss Emerald Isles Fire Department ISO rating.
The fire department just underwent a major inspection from the ISO office of the state. Just for your knowledge, the Insurance Service Office rates all the structures in North America to set the fire rates that you and I pay for our fire insurance. They're basically a fire chief's report card. So that tells you whether the fire chief's doing what he should be doing or you all probably need to go ahead and replace me. Emerald Isle, through the history, has dropped down. In 1998, we dropped from a 6 to a 4. And now in 2022, I guess it is, we've dropped to a 3, which is three is real good for a small department like ours, 1 being the best. The one thing that I can say we did outstanding that actually opened the eyes of every inspector in North Carolina was they looked at our social media and how we're getting our fire protection and fire safety messages out. And with Anna's help, we got over 35,000 hits that we sent fire protection out to our citizens, visitors, and whatnot. And that was really a record across the state, and all the rest of the inspectors across the state are looking at it saying, look, that's something we never thought about, and we're actually molding that and sending out to people across the state, different fire chiefs and whatnot. So Anna's really done as well on that also.
I'd like to invite Town Manager Matt Zapp and Billy Mathias up for our fireworks presentation.
What we wanted to do tonight, Mayor and Board, is to come before you and explain where we are with the situation that has arisen post-COVID, as a result of COVID, in this, what we're calling our new normal scenario. And one thing that is important to not just our staff, the board, but our community as a whole, is the opportunity to celebrate, and usually that is honor around the 4th of July. And what we wanted to talk about tonight will be a series of topics with this July 4th celebration. So we wanted to talk about the current situation, and then I was going to ask Captain Mathias, Billy and I wanted to share with you where we are with the current status of an opportunity to have a show, the importance of the pyrotechnics, about shell size and impact, as well as what the height chart shows, concepts to move that either off premises into a floating situation, regional concept, and take any Q&A that you have. So the first order of business is probably the more difficult part of the conversation. We have traditionally, in the last few years, been able to hold our fireworks show at the Bogue Inlet Pier. And at the pier, unfortunately, with not having a show in 20, not having a show in 21, we're not able to come back to that site because if, in defense of the local business owner, that is an extremely, if not the busiest day of the year. So we completely understand that taking out the pier out of commission, out of commerce for an entire day, specifically that day, is problematic. So at this point, the facts are the following. We are not able to launch fireworks from the pier, which happens to be our prime location. We are going in a descending order, trying to find locations and work through ideas as to where we could have the show. One is the Western Regional, two would be the Eastern Regional. We've considered the Point, and we also in the past have had a fireworks show where the now North Carolina boat ramp is located on 58. So when we looked at the Western Regional, it pans out not to be a viable location due to the proximity of all the structures that surround it. Same is the case with the Eastern Regional. So we're trying to identify locations that you can fire off the fireworks as well as have substantial parking, restroom facilities, things of that nature. So the West and the East, for all of those factors, apparently are dominantly out. The Point is still in play. It's not a most suitable or viable option because during the course of a season, often field complaints about traffic headed towards the Point. And with very limited parking at that area, that those that are residing there, renting there, or vacationing there, we oftentimes hear from them about congestion and issues at the Point. Then we went back and said potentially we could launch them at the boat ramp, having them sound side and having more folks enjoy that from the water. There's been some changes since the last time we did that. And now with that boat ramp being permitted and leased to the state, fireworks at the ramp may not even be permissible as the leasee. So we would have to negotiate with the state, and we've already sent a preliminary email asking for an exemption on that. But the mission for that coastal boat ramp is for boating access. And again, this defaults to one of, if not the busiest days, but for sure the busiest weekend of the year for that activity is July 4th weekend. If we are to choose the boat ramp as a location, and we're going to show you later in our slides, there are limitations to shell size, proximity, but the real kicker is you would have to shut down the boat ramp all day and not allow any boats and trailers to launch, because if you have to limit the area and scope once the fireworks are up, those boaters would not be able to come in and then put back onto their trailers and move. So it would require whichever day we chose, whether it's July 2nd, July 3rd, or July 4th, which is your Saturday, Sunday, Monday of this year's holiday, you would be losing a potential entire day of boating. Now, the second concept there is if we launch from the boat ramp itself, which we have a site map that's included in your presentation tonight, it will require, we believe, the closure of boat traffic in that vicinity. So we want to find a viable solution. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over for the ooh and ah factor, and Billy will help us there.
We look at the site display, so there's a list of procedures that we have to go through as far as the state's concerned. So with that being said, we're always obviously looking at a display site that has large open areas for the display, especially along our coastal area on the beach strand. But when we look at that, we have to have 70 feet per inch mortar size of distance. So looking at a 1-inch shell, we need 70 feet radius around that. We don't want to become the star on the map by any means for something tragic to happen. With the 70 feet per inch, we look at a discharge site. That is when the fireworks arrive on scene and equipment, no overhead wires from 25 feet away. So the concern, one of the concerns at the boat ramp, where we have done it in previous year before that, and shutting down that ramp itself and getting out to the navigable water, is a 50-foot radius once those fireworks arrive on the scene or on the site. We have to close that down from any type of combustible, flammable ignition sources. And then we also look at the fallout area where our embers and debris are falling out of the sky. Again, pier has been the prime, but if we're going forward, looking at potentially the Point, we have to look at all of those residential houses in that area and providing the best protection and best decision in protecting those areas. So again, how big are a shell size and impact? You see there the 2-inch shell, which we're looking at 140 feet. As far as radius distance for safety, has a 90-foot burst pattern. When you move up to an 8-inch shell, you obviously are going to go up to 360 foot. And so you got 45 feet of a burst size. Remember that as we move to this next one as far as height. So per inch shell, you can pretty much factor 100 feet per inch of shell. So when we had a 6-inch shell at 600 feet, it projects into the sky and then bursts. When we previously did it at the boat ramp prior to its completion, we had a limited 4-inch shell. So getting above heights of trees, getting up where a lot of people could see that show, I believe was a concern or a complaint after the fact that we did experience. There's the overview. You can see that outer ring based on, again, tidal changes to that area. We obviously need a dry site, so having to pinpoint an actual shot area for that location would depend on the marsh tides at the time. So with that being said, we went off of a pinpoint where we feel, when this conversation came up, putting this presentation together, we could shoot from. You see that dark blue line being that 6-inch site as far as your safety radius. Obviously that channel, the ramp getting out to the navigable waters would be shut down. Topic of floating barge or floating vessel out there in the intercoastal waterway. Again, you're talking about a cost that we have not researched, or we're trying to, but it's not available at this point in time. But when you're looking at that, you got a very different setup. You have something that's floating, it has to be moored. If it's not moored, you typically have to have some type of shallow depth anchor system. With that being said, when we're closing down navigable water, we have to let the United States Coast Guard know that we'd be shutting it down. An additional pyrotechnic crew has to have a personal flotation device. So you're looking at them trying to do a pyrotechnics display show while wearing a personal flotation device. Hopefully nothing, we're adding more to that situation when we look at a floating platform.
One idea that came up is to go over the numbers of where we are. Should we continue to look for options on island? Because obviously we want to do that first. Our fireworks show is approximately $20,000 with the current shell size that we're looking for and the length and duration of show. If we spend or invest more money, then we can get a higher show, a little bit longer show. So for example, the reason we lean into that, if we go to the point, in theory, we might need to go up in shell size so that you can elevate the show so that people down the beach strand could potentially see it, or you may be limiting it to folks that reside or rent in that area and or any boaters that would be off the way in the water, as well as a minimum of $10,000 in overtime. Because if you can imagine, we're at max capacity that entire week leading before and following, and in fact, we were at max capacity on the island in June and the month of July, so we did if I'm not mistaken, 2 months in a row of $2 million collections. So you had June, July, and August again that were record setting. So with that being in your bed tax collection, that helps to indicate for us how many people are present in the space. So we're assuming that each of those days preceding and leading to that fourth weekend, our call volume from police, fire, and EMS is being maximized. So we, in turn, to produce a fireworks show like we did last in 2019, we bring in all of our full-time officers, we help with the traffic control, and then we bring in a myriad of outside part-time officers that may be available to us. That total investment above the base service level is an additional $10,000 for that particular day, just to make sure we have every base covered as best as we can. So in round numbers, $20,000 for the base show and $10,000 in overtime means a $30,000 cost for the day. We could potentially consider a joint effort in the western end of Carteret, because at this point, we would look at Cedar Point, potentially Cape Carteret, Pelletier, Emerald Isle, joining forces. It may reduce our cost. It could stay static. It was just an option. It's obviously not our preferred option to move anything off island, but the question is it even feasible, and should staff begin those conversations? We haven't lifted the phone. We haven't called anyone. The reason that we wanted to have this conversation was to first share what we found out about a lack of area and then all the homework that we had. So the questions become, where would you like to have our show? Which days are our priorities? Because if we say we're going to pick this site and we want this day and we find that we don't have an available vendor, we would like to have a plan B and a plan C. So July 4th being on a Monday for 2022 is our preference Sunday night the 3rd, or is it Monday night the 4th? And then where do we fall out? So in a series of questions, we'd like to open the dialogue.
Matt, can you talk us through some of the challenges with the point?
We can talk about the point. We're just using this reference. We understand this is the boat ramp shell size map. At the point, it's a perception, reality, and a complaint-driven concern. So at this point, I think we've had some preliminary conversation with our vendors. Our vendors are concerned about the transport of those explosive devices and materials from the paved asphalt across the elevation of the boat ramp or the public access to the point where we have beach traffic access, and then navigating through that point to wherever we pinpoint and drop that X. We would have to either potentially pay a premium or validate with that vendor that they have the four-wheel drive vehicles and maintain that ingress egress for them. That we can do. The second would be blocking any other traffic that's in that zone. So people that are walking through that area, people that are recreating in that area, we can block that physically easier on the actual sand. The unknown variables are going to be the permissive rights with the Coast Guard trying to launch in that area. What is their concentric circle for protection, because that for them could potentially be a busy period as well. And then also, how high do we want to go? Because if we move to that end of the island, I think there would be a concern based on some feedback that I've gotten from the board. We may want to up that shell size from 4 to 6, maybe even to 8. If we do that, I think we have the territory to find a site, but then that could potentially look at closing of navigable waters, because that concentric circle, if you could picture this as the point, pushes that circle out further into the point.
Looking at the point as far as safety, life safety is concerned, so those fireworks, once they enter the beach strand, we would need to cordon that off up to 50 feet. So that would be where I would look to work with Chief Panzarelli and securing some type of security for that area. Once those shells start being loaded into the mortar tubes, then our radius of safety, that 70 feet per inch, would have to be established at that point in time. Not knowing exactly where the high tide mark is, we would need to pick a point where that high tide mark would be down at the point. We don't want to be putting the discharge site in an area where we have a tidal influx, especially if we have a king tide moment or time frame in that vicinity of July 4th. In addition to that, we have predominantly southwest winds being at the point. Obviously fire oriented here. We have dune grass there, very flammable. Runs really quick, especially when it's wind driven. In addition to that is residential home values. And then looking at, I think from a law enforcement standpoint, is just the traffic and the parking and trying to coordinate and get through those areas during July 4th weekend.
If we hold this event in a congested area such as down Coast Guard Road near the point, it's not necessarily the negative feedback we would get. If there's an emergency that occurs during this time frame while we're launching, that would severely inhibit our ability to get in and get out if someone had an emergency need. The further we go out into a 2-lane situation, it's a bit more problematic for us from the what if category.
I know the shell size, talking about size would have to be larger there. What 8-foot or 8 diameter shell, how far out mileage-wise can that be seen? Do you know that? What are we looking at for that?
I would say between $20,000 and $40,000 for the show, but we also have reason to believe we have local vendors that may either be interested in sponsoring and or matching. So we could potentially leave this room with a cap of a normalized investment of 20 and procuring sponsorship support to X. So I'm not trying to dodge it. We just don't know exactly yet. But I'm confident that if we were set on a path, we would try to mate resources with that need.
So anytime we're looking above 6-inch, so 6-inch shells can be buried into like a mortar box. And so as far as visibility is concerned, that's difficult to gauge due to the atmospheric conditions that we may see. We could have low-lying clouds in the area.
If we went down to the point, hypothetically at this point, how much actual beach strand would need to be shut down?
So the beach strand closure will be directly related to the size of those shells as well. So there's a variable there. I would say from a safety's purpose, we would shut down more than is the minimum, because of the high volume of visitation we see that specific time period. So I'll let Billy speak to that more direct. But if we determine it's a 6-inch show or an 8-inch show, and then if we get into a buried conversation, what I heard you say, we'll be out there potentially with a backhoe, moving and grooving and digging and building so that your work zone becomes bigger. But not knowing how big we can afford to go yet and how big that show would be, what's the, I would say, generate the worst case concentric circle would be the question.
Yeah, so to address that, and again, uncharted, I would, as far as the safety factor, it would be a 2-to-1, would be what I would be looking at. As far as depending on the shell size, depends on go out 2 times more than that as far as the beach strand is concerned and shutting down that area, because if something does tragically or by chance happen and gets an ignition to those fireworks, by any means, I don't want any bystanders or anything injured during that time.
I see a lot of problems at the point. Just a lot of problems down there. There are a lot of houses down there, and as Billy said, you know how that southwest wind is, and emergencies and parking. There's just a lot of problems down there. As far as the boat ramp, we've taken some heat for not having a fireworks before, but you shut that boat ramp down a day, especially the 4th of July, and I don't know if we could do it anyway, but I personally don't see but one viable option, and that's contact our neighbors and see if we can do some joint efforts on that side.
One option that was discussed, apparently the city of New Bern tried 3 years ago with the company that we've worked with, who is a local company, to secure a barge. The closest one that they could find available was out of Norfolk, Virginia. The barge had to be 300 feet, just over 300 feet long, and that's a football field. The permits that are required for that and the permissions from the Coast Guard, as well as many other of the regulators out there, and there was quite an extensive list from what I'm told, made the cost of the barge and getting that in place almost double the cost of the actual show itself. And that's information received from Class A.
Well, if you use the barge, you still got to shut down the waterway of, that doesn't seem feasible either, not to me.
I think our boating community is larger than it was when we did this, I don't know, it was more than 10 years ago. Right, the boat ramp wasn't there. There was not as much boat traffic in that area as there is today.
The number of
This is a tough
people
one.
increased.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jason, did you talk about that?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Floyd. I think that we need to reach out to our neighboring communities and see if we can just collaborate and make a big show. And even our Oceanside residents and visitors can then go to the sound side, go to those accesses and still see the same show if it's in Cape Carteret.
Very, very briefly, please.
So our gentleman from the audience pointed out that a major percentage and up to 75% of the point is a protected habitat, and we work with our birding communities to rope that off and protect it off, so that's an excellent point. And then we also have our sea turtle patrol, which would have some potential concerns depending on that time of year.
Matt, I have one comment, and I think I had mentioned this to you earlier on, possibly introducing a laser light show here on the island and have a different type of July 4th celebration altogether. I mean, I hate the even thought of not having our fireworks, but we're held in our limits to where we can have it safely is narrowed down.
So one of the things that Commissioner Finch had brought up to us was if we do a joint program with our neighbors and it helps the western end of the county, what could we do to augment that on an opposing night here on the island? And could we partner with our local laser company? So for example, if we did a joint fireworks display on the 3rd on the mainland near Cape Carteret, could we do potential a laser show on a Saturday night or the Monday night to augment and give more celebratory reasons to draw people to the island? So we would research all those choices and ideas as well.
I actually like that idea with a.
That's a Good idea.
That's a very good
You
idea.
get a 2-for-1 weekend experience.
That's a good idea.
That's a really good idea.
I'd like to suggest a motion to move forward with investigating a joint effort with our western end towns with the subset of, at the same time, investigating what it would take to double up and have that laser light show. Is there a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion to request the town manager and staff to, just continue to investigate the possibilities of, our neighboring towns and, also consider Commissioner Finch's, suggestion about, maybe a laser show on another day.
Motion's on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion is approved.
Thank you all.
Thank you all again. Good job. Billy, if you would remain up and give us an update on lifeguard recruitment, please.
Mother Nature handed us the past 2 weekends with some unfavorable weather, so we had to postpone some of our swim testing for the applicants and returning lifeguards. But we did have the agility test this past weekend, so we'll get to that in the next slide. 2022 improvements, briefly going to review these, what we discussed in November. What we're looking to do is continue on with the 20 USLA lifeguards to hire. That was going to be putting around 9 guards on a shift, 7 out on the beach strand, with those additional 2 for the 9 per shift, looking to adjust the hours to cover some of those water rescue calls we are seeing after the 5:30 hour, between 5:30 and 7:30. So our coverage on that beach strand would change and increase, pushing back their start time by 30 minutes, increasing that on the back end 30 minutes, and then also keeping 2 guards roaming our hot spots right now, which would be between Black Skimmer and Doe Ramp, out there on the beach strand to respond to any of these water-related emergencies. Increasing our water safety beach flags from 25 to 30 for 2022. I've worked with Artie Dunn, Public Works, and Joe in the location of these additional 5 and also the 25 that we have out there already, so they're better seen. Again, adjustment of coverage hours, continued PSAs, and working with Anna and trying to educate our visitors to our area as they change 3, 5, 7 days at a time. We're constantly getting that influx of inexperience to our beach strand. And so we want to get those PSAs and continue those PSAs going forward. Cross-training FTEs, police, fire, and EMS. We do have 1 additional in the fire department who is currently going out to try to lower their swim times. Chief Panzarelli has 3 officers who are also in that program, attempting to lower their swim times as well. So we're hoping that cross-training pays off for our shoulder seasons. And working with Chief Jones with the EMS department, putting together a North Carolina medical responder course for those FTEs along with our lifeguards to have a little bit more emergency medical care on our beach strand. The current status of our lifeguard team, we have from this past weekend, again, all of our returners have to swim and qualify year after year. So they're keeping up their conditioning, they're keeping up with their physical capabilities. Want everybody, if you know somebody, friends of friends, family members, college students, neighbors, come be a part of the team. Starting April 1st, 30 to 40 hours per week. Flexible schedule, $15 an hour. It's a great job.
Outside of the physical requirements, prerequisites, age requirements, anything like that for a recruit?
Yes, those age requirements is 18 years of age, and we're limited to that because of the labor laws for North Carolina.
I'd like to make a motion this time to nominate Jay Wooten to join the Golf Cart Advisory Committee to fill a term that will expire in January 2024.
All right, motion's on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite up Josh Edmondson to discuss amendments to 6.4 Dunes and Vegetation Protection, Section 6.4.2 and 6.4.3 of the Unified Development Ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. If you'll remember, last month, we did have a public hearing on updates to our Dunes and Vegetation Ordinance pertaining to removing many of the exemptions in the ordinance that did not require permitting, and now requiring permitting. That will include things like the pruning of large vegetation, large trees, and removal of any tree over 3 inches. From this point forward, if you guys vote positively on this amendment tonight, it would require you to receive a permit to remove a tree in Emerald Isle. So we have, again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have pertaining to the ordinance amendment. I have been in communication with several members of the public, just have general questions about the ordinance amendment and what it means. We've gone over that with them, and they are happy about some of the changes we are making with the ordinance. So again, I think this is going to be a positive for the community, and entertain any questions you may have pertaining to this particular ordinance tonight.
Any questions from the board? Thank you very much, Josh. All right, now we'll ask Matt Zapp and Josh Edmondson to discuss our Call Before You Cut initiative.
So the Call Before You Cut program, again, thanks to Commissioner Finch, is a concept that we have been working on since November and December. The graphic image you have before you, we were waiting for the approval of tonight's potential approval or anticipated approval of the Dunes and Vegetation Amendment. With that being approved this evening, what we would want to do is launch tomorrow, with your consensus and consideration, the Call Before You Cut program. So we have this graphic that would go out. We've also talked about a future opportunity with additional video, QR coding, but we wanted to share the generalized concept that providing this information out early, we also have a list of the dominant vendors, professional tree removal companies, and we want to send them notice as well. We're going to send it to them electronically, a printed copy to their mailing address, and then call each of those vendors, and then stress to the vendor that before a tree can be taken down, you would have to have that permit in hand. So whether it's the homeowner or the vendor that pulls it, it is their responsibility to be sure that they aren't removing a tree that hasn't been permitted that meets this requirement. And Josh can talk about the requirements at a little bit greater length, but it's dominantly trees that are going to be 3 inches in caliper at a 36 height above grade or larger. And we have had a tremendous amount of interest. The volume of calls have increased. And then part of the call increase is also neighbors inquiring, does this property at such and such address have a permit? I believe that there's cutting occurring. Is it permissible? So we wanted to provide a reporting opportunity for that activity anonymously. You need not be concerned about retribution from your neighbors, but if you want to make sure that that activity is acceptable, they can also call into our standard telephone number that's listed on this graphic.
Let me suggest a motion that the town board authorize the town manager and staff to establish the Call Before You Cut program effective February 9th, 2022, and possibly the next board meeting have a little bit better idea as they have gone through some of those growing pains on what they would need to support that.
Steve, this is your idea.
Yes,
Why
it
don't
is.
we-
I think you take it.
I'd love to. The town board authorizes the town manager and staff to establish the Call Before You Cut program effective February 9, 2022.
All right, next up, we'll have Matt Zapp to give us an update on the boat ramp dredging project.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I have great news to report. Recently, the Shoreline Protection Office in fall of 2021 was trying to help us with an issue that was identified at the North Carolina boat ramp. We own the property but lease it to the state, and so the town has received an opportunity to work under a memorandum of agreement with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission for that boating access area. The project is approximately $90,000 to dredge nearly 1,000 cubic yards of material to where you actually launch your boat along that area. So the town board had approved us to move forward with this concept in the memorandum of understanding on November 9th. and we navigated the holiday season and then our office closures and state closures due to the pandemic, and we were approved to move forward as of the 3rd of February and 4th of February, we were executing contracts. So now this is just a general update that our contract has been approved and that 2/3 of this grant would come from the North Carolina shallow draft process. The matching 1/3 would come from the state of North Carolina outside of their funding sources, so that $0 of local Emerald Isle money would be invested in this vastly important project. We just are tasked with the bidding, awarding, execution, and full paperwork, which would come from the town of Emerald Isle. So at this point, with your concurrence, we would go ahead and bid this project and get the bids moving and try to bring back a certified vendor to you as early as your March 8th meeting, and then authorize them as early as March 9th to begin that dredging.
Item 18 will be discussion and consideration of the progressive goals list for the town of Emerald Isle.
Thank you. Each year over the last 3 years, we've established a progressive goals plan, a strategic plan, if you will, a corporate style outlay, which includes a 12-month, which would be 0 to 12 months, items that you would want the staff to execute, for example, in this calendar year of 2022. Then we have a progressive plan that is a phase 2 or second tier of priority, which would be from a 6-month outlook to 24 months. And then we have what we put on our, what you would consider to be a long-range plan, which would be between 18 and 36 months outlook. So we have provided you with an updated version. There are currently 17 items on the 2022 list, approximately 9 items on the 2023 list. And right now, we have 1 item on the 2024 list that is a reoccurring, as we are in a multi-year fleet lease program. So under the 2022 list, obviously the most important and critical for us is establishing our budget with a state deadline of doing so by June 30th. As you did tonight, allowing multiple opportunities for public improvement or public input into that budget. And then going down the list, just verbally for those in the audience, our second priority, and these aren't ranked in order of importance of number 2 through 17, but number 2 would be continued beach safety efforts. And you saw an exhaustive list of that, and we want to go ahead and thank again publicly Chief Bill Walker and Ocean Rescue Coordinator Matthias for those efforts. So continued beach safety, continued increased public awareness and communication efforts, and I think it is very important to stress that with Anna's assistance, now she's celebrated 1-year anniversary with us. Everything that we had desired in our communication strategy was not only achieved, but some of those were actually exceeded. And we're looking forward to what 2022 will bring us with increased video, increased communications, and further opportunities to keep our public, our businesses and visitors aware of what we're doing. Item 4 is talking about a fire station improvement, EMS improvements. So we're working through that conversation. We have a task force established, and we would like to bring those findings to the board as early as 3rd quarter of 2022. And then moving down the list, stormwater. That happens to be what keeps us up at night, specifically when you hear the thunder roll. So we have a very fortunate opportunity. And in Emerald Isle, we not only manage our $11 to $12 million reoccurring budget, but for the audience's sake, we have, to our potential access, nearly $9.8 million in FEMA-related grant opportunities that are mitigation funds for stormwater. One of our first projects at $535,000 ran through FEMA and took nearly 13 months to get approval. We received that approval last month, and we had tonight your authorization to move forward with bidding that project. So we have a $10 million opportunity ahead of us. We, in our potential rear view, a $535,000 improvement that's on Reed Drive, Cedar, and Lee. And then we also have a gifting in the form of ARPA funds, or the COVID-19 relief funds, of nearly $1.2 million. So in addition to our normalized $12 million budget, our staff has the great gift of trying to help figure out, prioritize, bid, execute, turn in the paperwork, and dot every I, cross every T, and not make a single boo-boo on another $12 million of improvements. And we believe that some of those items on this list, which are included infrastructure infrastructure, and infrastructure, and is stormwater is one of the highest ranked improvements for us. Culvert work we've identified as already approved. That's a $535,000 FEMA job. And we had delayed public beach access boardwalk replacements because material costs had gone from $30,000 a unit to near $80,000 a walkway. So I'll slow down for those with us. What we had done for $30,000 is now nearly $82,000. So we have over $800,000 in a potential grant application to do 10 walkways, which would not only bring us up to speed, but also help us move forward with some mitigation there by using better materials and helping us. These are all discussions that our board had in a day-long budget retreat. Dredging, the boat ramp is listed on our project as a goal. Bogue Banks Water Corporation, they're working to install additional freshwater well sites that provide us all with the necessary drinking water for the island. Our planning department, item 10, is, I would say, nearly 50, if not 60% through with a comprehensive review of our development ordinances, and we're continuing to meet. So we're looking to do that and finish it out this year. Replacing storm-related equipment, which we have on this list of dump trucks, tractors, loaders, that in the event of a major catastrophic storm across the island, we can ready up and be storm prepared to remove, clear roads, the beach, things of that nature. And then moving down, a master plan. So the Emerald Isle Parks Master Plan, which is advertised and select a firm, that was identified at our retreat as well, and it's listed at item number 12. Item 13, discuss the capital improvements plan. So we're working through fire, EMS, EOC buildings. We just need to keep that on the forefront. And then a big conversation we've had over the last 12 or 18 months was specifically related to relocating the boat launch navigational channel. And we know that that project could be a potential $1.7, $1.8 million conversation, and we're also moving forward with engineers there. Item 15 was consider the sale of surplus vehicles, and I want to give you a great example. I think Commissioner Messer and I worked on this one at the onset, and we had a vision to help put our police officers, firefighters, lifeguards, and newer equipment, and we were trying to figure out a financial way to do that. And we came across a fleet lease program with Enterprise Rental Car, and we made our first purchase a little over 2 years ago. We were able to sell surplus equipment that we had, take those cash dollars, and lease vehicles at a lower price. We never anticipated the impact of the pandemic, and what that has done is driven the value of our used vehicles even higher than predicted. So, for example, one of our employees at a department is driving in a 2018 pickup truck today. That vehicle has 40,000 miles on it, extremely well kept, highly maintained. We are considering surplusing that vehicle at a profit of $25,000 to $28,000 or $30,000. We can lease a brand new vehicle less than $7,000 a year. The cash that would come in hand from that sale is going to pay for the life cycle on that truck. And in 36 months, when you go to sell that truck, it's going to draft another return on that investment. So we were able to put a substantial amount of employees in brand new vehicles. It dramatically lowered our maintenance and repair bill and simultaneously increased the employee's satisfaction, because if you're a 12-hour employee and your office is that cruiser or your office is that truck and you're driving that beach strand or you're that lifeguard that's highly visible or that beach patrol officer, that piece of equipment has proven out to be even better. But financially, we have been very fortunate there. So we saw a savings of a little north of $250,000 in year one, a reoccurring cost savings of a little north of $100,000, and we are looking to replace at least 7, if not 8 more vehicles on that fleet lease program this year. So there's your side story of having a former dealership owner on staff, and you call up third base when you need it, but that program has worked well. Any thoughts on that, Floyd?
Availability, are we going to be able to get the vehicles we need?
This is more in jest. I'll say this to you because I'm a diehard Chevrolet or GM person myself. We tried to order Chevrolet vehicles and we were denied. We looked at what the options were, and at this point, the only manufacturer that we can replace trucks with is currently Ford. We also had an issue with cruisers. Last year, there were no police cruisers available, and we ran into a stumbling block with Chrysler on Jeeps. So there are some shifts in the market. We were able to take a white Jeep, but we need it for beach patrol, and we had white Jeep assigned to beach patrol. Well, we needed another Jeep for lifeguards, and we needed it red. We had to settle for a white Jeep, and we're going to make a minor investment to wrap it in red vinyl. So you're finding the opportunity for replacement very, very challenging, and we were even down today looking at what other options. But right now, we have an order for 7 new trucks that should hit the ground in July. But we've seen how that has taken sometimes 14 months. So the current Jeep we took a month ago was ordered almost 14 months earlier. So it's problematic.
Well, hopefully that'll get better with the chip situation.
We hope so too, but again, that's a variable we can't foresee. So to answer your direct question, fingers are crossed, and I'm really sorry, sir, they're Fords, but we're doing the best we can, so.
Okay.
Procurement of land off island for a yard debris site, we're in the final throes of that. We may have a very affordable solution for the residents. The reason that that's important is we're spending approximately $50,000 to $65,000 a year tipping fees on our current yard debris program. If you haven't downloaded our yard debris tracker, you'll know where your truck is in your neighborhood. We have 2 trucks running 5 days a week, so we're trying to find a cost-effective way to move that forward. And then the last is we do have some attrition and other items working on. So this one was 17 listed on this item is research and present cost to eliminate trees at the gateway, and we're working to get you those prices. And we do have some retirements in the queue that will be added to this list, and we'll be working through those retirements, rehires, and replacements when they're announced. But that's what's on your short-term list. We like to highlight that first. You can see what's on 23 and 24. So we stop now with our public presentation, and we'd ask the board, are there any other priorities that you want us to work on? Because what we see is this is our roadmap and our diary simultaneous. This is what staff will focus on, not only to load the budget, but also to effectively achieve these goals for you in the timeframes established.
I'll make a motion to approve the progressive goals list for the town of Emerald Isle 2022-2024.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you.
All right, next up would be the discussion for the vacant seat at the Carteret County Beach Commission. I'd like to open that discussion up to the board.
I have some comments there, if I may. I want to stress the importance of Emerald Isle having a presence on the Beach Commission. And I want to maybe alert the public to the importance of the Beach Commission. And I'll read you a couple of excerpts from their mission statement and really what they're going to accomplish in Carteret County. So the Carteret County Beach Commission identifies and develops plans and strategies and programs to restore and maintain those beautiful wide sandy beaches we have out there today. But not just beaches, they're looking at environmentally sensitive beach renourishment, dune management, vegetation management, and sand management. And so that board also works on funding at the federal, state, and local level for beach renourishment and storm protection that helps further mitigate any further erosion of our existing shoreline. So it's a very important seat. And I just wanted to stress the importance of that. I think everyone here knows how passionate I am about the sand on those beaches. It helps all of us. It keeps our tax dollars low. It attracts people here.
Make a motion to appoint Jason Holland to fill the recently vacated term on the Carteret County Beach Commission.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. All right, item 20 would be any comments from our town clerk, attorney, or town manager. Annie, any comments from you tonight?
None at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Zapp, any comments from you tonight?
Yeah, just a push out again for the Emerald Isle Fishing Tournament. There's 6 scholarships out there at $3,000 each. If you know a high school graduate this year from Carteret County Public Schools, they can go to their guidance counselors. That funding is there, and they can apply for the scholarships through their guidance counselor or through the website.
And I'd like to thank the board for their nomination to the Beach Commission. Should I be appointed, I will give 100% dedication to carrying out the mission of the Beach Commission to the best of my ability. So I thank you very, very much for that. I realize the importance of that seat, and if appointed, will give it everything I have. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
Nice job.
Whistling over there? Whistling over there? I can hear your,
Yeah. Well, I'll pop that.
where are you going to eat?
That what that was?
I'm gonna go to road, John.
Good for you.